Today I have Eckhart Tolle talking about the true source of satisfaction. Why is it so important? If you are not basically satisfied, you cannot create a wonderful life around you. All your aspects of life will not be fulfilled if you are not beginning with yourself in your own satisfaction. That's why it's so wonderful that Eckhart is talking about the true source of this satisfaction, where it is and how you can always connect to it. So enjoy listening and have a wonderful day.
That realization is that there's two of you, but most people are only familiar with one of the two. So the one that you are of course familiar with is the person that you are, your past, which exists as mainly the content of your mind, your physical body, all the things that make up what you perceive as yourself. And when you go to a psychoanalyst, then that's what he or she would encourage you to look at in order to find out facts about yourself that you didn't know that can be helpful. Repressed memories that perhaps interfere with the way in which you function in this world, or other material that you were not conscious of and somehow prevents you from being a normal person. So normal then is what the psychoanalysts would want to want to bring you back to being a normal functioning human being. But normal functioning human beings have in the 20th century alone been responsible for murdering in warfare and other conflict. I'm number dyslexic, so I keep forgetting numbers. It's like 200 million or so, 150 to 200 million humans in the 20th century alone, and those things were not perpetrated by people who were declared clinically insane or were dangerous criminals. Well, some of them were, but most of them were not recognized by society as dangerous criminals. Some became soldiers and just did what they felt they had to do, and then of course others perpetrated worse things. But the basic fact remains that there's a lot of madness in the so-called normal state of consciousness. And that's only the collective expression of the madness. On a personal level, also many people, most people, if they haven't found the other half, also experience a lot of unnecessary conflict and heaviness and unhappiness, frustration, whatever what the Buddha would call suffering. So, you know who you are. When I ask you, who are you? You would reply with reference to whatever it is you know about yourself, which starts with your name and your history, your personal history and what you do, and who you know, and so on. Now, to most people, that's all there is to them, and that's a very diminished life but it's normal. So they miss continuously the other half of who they are. And I call it half just provisionally, just as a pointer. The other half is that in you that you cannot know, but is continuously there. That in you that you cannot know conceptually through applying thought, but that without which there could be no thought. There is something in you that is the unknown you, and most people don't realize that. It's not that the unknown you, they could realize it at any moment if they paid attention, but they're so fascinated by the known you, or I, that they get hypnotized by the continuously arising content, the content of their mind that makes up mainly the psychological you that you know. And then there's external experience, all the things that continuously draw your attention and tell you that this is very important and you need to give it attention. And some of it on that level is maybe important. Many other things that pretend to be important are not important. So your attention goes out or goes into thinking, and the two get mixed up. And so what arises in your daily life and what makes up your life is the continuous arising of new stuff, external stuff that you need to do, and inner stuff that you need to think about, and emotional stuff that comes up. So you've sensory experience in whatever form goes, and you have to deal with this and that, and then you have to, when there's nothing to deal with in the middle of the night, you think. Well, during the day you think too. But if there's nothing external you can do right now, then there's always one thought after another comes, and you think about, oh yeah. And that's your life. That's what most people consider their life, and that's what most people derive their sense of identity from. Me. An uneasy sense of identity for most people, not quite, doesn't feel quite fulfilled for very long, but it hopes one day to get there. Just need a little bit more of that and a little bit more of that, and maybe get rid of this and get rid of that. Then I'll be okay. But you'll never be okay on that level alone, no matter how the stuff that makes up your life, the external, the inner and outer stuff, no matter how it gets arranged and rearranged. And then there's the other half that is continuously overlooked, but is always there behind the stuff and in between the stuff, even inside it. Now the other is, of course, to give you, let's play with one or two analogies. The other is, let's say you are the universe, which of course you are. You're not in the universe, you are an expression of the universe, manifesting temporarily as this particular form. It's born, and then there's a consciousness that arises like a flash of light. That's your life. So, shortened, if you could see it from a cosmic perspective, that would be the human life. A flash of consciousness suddenly illuminates what it calls the world, and it goes. And where is it gone after, when it goes, where is it? Where did it come from? And where does it go? Does it have an independent and autonomous existence? And of course this little flash, when it doesn't know where it comes from, believes during its incredibly short lifespan that it has an autonomous, completely independent existence, together with billions of other flashes. And of course that's not really the case, because that flash emanates from somewhere and then returns to the place from where it emanated, which isn't a place. So, but it's incredible to see that that's really what your life is. It lights up the world for a moment. And of course Jesus already said something similar. You are the light, he said. He said, I am the light, and he said, you are the light. That's the light of consciousness. So, to use another analogy, you are the universe, a temporary expression of the universe in the process of knowing itself, and let's look at a different image now, just to get a sense of what I'm talking about. So you are the universe, and if I said to the universe, you need to become conscious of the other half of you, because if I talk to the universe, you only know yourself as the galaxies that make up the universe, each galaxy consisting of billions of stars, probably most stars having a number of planets going around them, and then there are billions of galaxies. If the universe only knew itself as the galaxies and whatever happens there, that's an important part of it, of course. But it makes only one aspect, one dimension of the universe. The other dimension of the universe is space. And that is the most incredible thing about the universe, even more incredible than the multiplicity of things that are in it, is the depths of space that enables the multiplicity of things to be in it. That is the most awesome, and I'm using awesome not in the teenager's usage, but in its true original meaning. Awe is probably an onomatopoeic, well, not many of you might know what that means. It's a word that originates from an imitation of what it means. So, for example, the word to knock, 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 is an imitation of the sound of knocking, and then this is how the word arose. So they call it onomatopoeic. It's amazing I could remember that. So awesome, there you have the word awe, and I think that could also be onomatopoeic because it comes from awe. It's the sound, the spontaneous sound of awe, surprise, or something very deep, responding to something that for a moment stops your mind. And it's only if your mind stops can you go awe. You can't go awe while you're thinking. So it's not only when you look at the vastness of space at night, you go, the awe will only come if there's a moment of not thinking, not trying to identify what the celestial bodies are. There's a place for that. But then there comes where you tune into or become aware of the vastness of space. And you go, wow. And while that happens, you're not thinking. And it becomes a meditation, a spontaneous meditation. And that, if the universe becomes aware of itself not only as what's in it, the content, but also as the space that enables the content to be. And the moment you look at the universe and become aware of the space, the universe has become aware of the space. because you are the universe. And you have become aware not only of outer space, you've become aware also of a vast inner space that is there always behind the thinking and in between the thinking. And that is cannot only be known in rare moments when you look at something. It could be something else that is incredibly beautiful and stops your mind. Oh. Or something that surprises you and you can't immediately interpret it, and it just arises. Wow, oh. It stops your mind, and as your mind stops, awareness remains as an empty space. But that empty space, there's more to it than the words signify. Words are very limited. And of course, words refer to the realm of things, to the realm of stuff. And when you start using words to point to something deeper, then they become very limiting. As long as you know that, that's fine, and you don't get too much drawn into, or to attach yourself too much to the words. So the same, you are the universe, so what applies to the universe out there also applies to you. There's both the stuff of your life, which makes up the person, your life experience, and then there's something deeper that's your life. So in the Power of Now I called it the difference between your life situation and your life. Your life situation is whatever is happening and has happened and might happen in your life and in your mind, because your mind is your life, and that's your life situation. But if that's all you know, then you don't know the life that you are. And the life that you are is deeper than your life situation and your body and your thoughts and emotions, but not absolutely separate from them. And here we come to the next analogy, which I've used many times before. You are the wave on the surface of the ocean, or let's better the ripple on the surface of the ocean. And the ripple, if it only knows itself as the ripple, it leads a very limited life. If it knows itself as the ocean, then it leads a more fulfilled life. Even though on the surface, of course, things come and go and have their imperfections. But you are then in touch with something that transcends the imperfections of your surface life, and to some extent also changes your surface life, makes it a more pleasant experience, without saying that of course there will be imperfections, there will be gain and loss. This is all part of your surface life in the physical dimension. You can't live without gain and loss. You lose something, you gain something. Hot and cold, up and down. A good thing, a good experience, and a bad experience. But you're no longer totally trapped in the outer form of the experience. And even if it's a so-called bad experience, and particularly when a so-called bad experience comes, you can sense your connectedness with something that transcends that particular experience, something that is deeper. And this is how people have awakened spiritually. You've been in prison, or in dreadful situations, or close to death, or are told that they only have a few more months to live, or have experienced great loss. People around them suddenly died in an accident, or they lost everything they had, and suddenly an emptiness appears in their life. And that emptiness is at first perceived as a dreadful thing, and sometimes the point comes when that hole in your life suddenly, which was so painful, suddenly you don't resist it anymore, and you just go, well, that's what is. You become completely present, and suddenly that spaciousness that was always there in the background of your life, in between your thoughts, behind your thoughts, the ocean, you're going to call it, or the space, is there, and you sense it very strongly. In other words, you sense yourself also as this vast presence, not just the person. The person has come out of that vast presence in the same way that a little ripple seems to come out of the ocean. And looks around, and it looks in the mirror. That's me. Takes a selfie. Me. And tries everything to strengthen its identity as the me. And there's nothing wrong with, let's say, whatever way, there are many ways in which the little ripples try to strengthen their ripple identity. And whatever the ripple, whatever is closest, the most salient factor in your ripple identity is what probably the ripple will focus on most. If it's a physically strong ripple, it'll identify with physical strength. If the ripple looks particularly beautiful, it'll identify with its appearance and try to enhance that even more. And for a while that works, but only for a while. Or if the ripple is particularly clever, it can work things out with its ripple mind, which is only a pale reflection of the one mind of the ocean, but it can work out things with its ripple mind, and then it gets a very clever ripple, so much more clever than all the other ripples. Or the ripple has had a hard time, and since it was born as a ripple and feels it's been very disadvantaged ripple, and it starts to complain a lot about what other ripples did to it. And in that way, it can also build up a very strong ripple identity as the victim of other ripples. And can think and talk about it for a lifetime. And it gives them a very satisfying ripple identity. And so it'll say things like, you have suffered, let me tell you about my suffering. So it can build up that. So even ripples that fail can have very strong ripple identities. It's not just the big ripples who have the big egos. I'm actually talking about ego here. It's not just the egos. Sometimes people think big egos are those who, they drive big cars and they go around displaying either their wealth or their strengths or their knowledge or whatever it is they identify with, or they talk in a very loud voice and are always mainly concerned about themselves. Yes, that could be part of it. There are people like that, quite a few, and who think they are better than most. And then there are others who have the reverse of that. They think they've been treated unfairly by life, they have not had a chance, or they love also making some people wrong. It could be your parents. It's all their fault. I'm not saying there are no unconscious parents. Some parents are dreadfully unconscious, and some of you might have had a taste of that. But it could be their parents, it could be a group of people that they identify as those that cause my suffering, and then they go on the internet and start putting things in about that group of people who are doing it to us or to me. So whatever, you can create an enemy there, and then that strengthens your identity. And if you have more enemies, your ripple identity gets even stronger, because now I really know who I am, because I'm not that. Could talk for a long time about that, but it's ordinary existence for all ripples that haven't recognized who they are in their essence. So it's vital to know that other dimension in you, and that always starts, it's always there, it doesn't start, it's always there in the present moment, which is now. The question is whether at this moment you can know or sense within yourself that underlying presence that is deeper than the person. And it's very hard, it's very intangible, it's very elusive. You can't say it's here or it's there. It's all pervasive. It's your own presence. And if you're thinking very much, you can't sense it, not while you're engaged in thinking about it. Okay, where is the presence? I'm trying to find it, but I can't. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong. Well, the only thing you're doing wrong is you're trying to find it through thinking. So, if thinking subsides for a moment, what remains seems like nothing at first, just a space. But in that space, which at first seems like nothing and certainly doesn't seem interesting, that space, if you don't immediately run away from it, and then gradually you begin to sense that there is a depth there and a peace, and there is more to it than one could ever put into words, to that emptiness. And that connects you with something that transcends the thinking mind, but without which there would be no thinking. That is the ripple becoming aware of its own depth, where it is more than the ripple. Aha. And then the ripple continues to be a ripple for a little while, but the way in which it experiences the world, the surface world, actually is different, because it senses a deep connectedness with something that it cannot be named really, something deep and vast. And it can sense that as the foundation for its life, at the very essence of its life. And then it can actually enjoy the short-lived play of ripples. And it actually can also enjoy the way it looks as a ripple. Its identity no longer comes from its external form. And then it can enjoy, oh, this ripple looks in a mirror and says, oh, I look good. Why not? You honor the form and then says, I'm going to wear something nice then I look even better and I'll enjoy that. Why not? If that's not where you get your sense of self from, in which case it becomes obsessive and you lose yourself in that, you can honor the world of form, or you can realize that you have a very good mind, and you can, which may be better than other people's minds, and you can work things out. That why not enjoy and cultivate it if it doesn't take you completely out of the deeper connectedness? And then if there's a deeper connectedness and you have a good mind, then it becomes really a creative mind. There are ripples who have a good mind without the connectedness, and they can do limited things in the realm of analysis and compiling bits of knowledge and so on. That's fine. They are not creative. But if the ripple has a good mind, and has a connectedness with the depths, which means in between using your mind, and even sometimes while you use their mind, or while the ripple uses it, because you are the ripple, of course, you can sense an underlying stillness, an underlying presence. So then the ripple learns to think, you thinking, applying thought to something, and then there's a train of thought, then you come to an end, doesn't go any further, and then the ripple withdraws into alert stillness. Where you don't try anything, you don't go into alert stillness as a means to an end, you just go into, it's enjoyable. You go into alert stillness, spaciousness opens up. There is no thought now, and that feels good. How long that takes or lasts, we don't know. Could be 10 seconds, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, depends. So you go out into thought, and you go back into stillness, and then thought becomes inspired. And then you become a famous person, probably, unless you are so ahead of your time that nobody recognizes what you're doing, and only after you die they recognize you, or what you did. That can happen too. Not that that would be a dreadful thing for you, because with that connectedness with being, you enjoy what you're doing, and the real enjoyment, no matter what it is, the real source of the enjoyment of what you are doing is in the being behind the doing. The real source of the enjoyment, although it may look as if what you enjoy is the doing, but this really, the source of enjoyment is the beingness that you can sense. That's where the enjoyment emanates from. And that's a wonderful way to live, to act, and yet to sense something deeper, so that you're not dependent on the outcome of your actions, because you can never predict whether the world is going to recognize what you produce, if they produce anything. You might not produce anything. Not everybody is called upon to produce something in the world of physical forms. It may just be the way in which you interact with other human beings that is your contribution to this world, is a new and deeper way of interacting with other human beings. And so, whatever it is, there will be a contribution that you make, but not you as the little me. You become simply an opening for something deeper that the universe wants to manifest through you. And to live in that way is very satisfying. Whether or not you are externally successful or not is secondary now. So you don't depend on and when you don't achieve, you might know where you're going, but it comes from a deeper level. And if you don't get there, the outcome, you don't reach it, there's no successful outcome, it's fine, you enjoyed every moment of it. Or where you wanted to get to initially is actually not where the universe is taking you. So you might have started with, some people start meditating because they want to get better at martial arts, or get better in business, to have a more acute mind, or develop psychic abilities so they can predict what the stock market is doing. And that could be for some people, why they take up meditation. But if they stay with it, they may find that the original aim has changed, and it no longer matters what the stock market is doing. Not deeply. It may still matter to them on the surface. As I put it, it matters, but it doesn't matter absolutely. So, and I've said this before, all those things that people regard as absolutely important in their life, that determines whether your life is good or bad, it is true that that matters, but it is not true that it matters absolutely. It matters relatively, and that includes how much money you have, where you live, what kind of work you do, what kind of people you live with, what your health is like. All those things matter, certainly, and you would probably choose one thing over another. You would probably choose health over illness. But for some people, the very thing that would not have chosen is the very thing they need in order to deepen and to know who they really are. And that might be an illness, that might be loss, that might be a shortage of this or that. So there's only one thing that matters, absolutely, and that's knowing your own depths or presence, and so that you derive your identity or your sense of self no longer from all the things that only matter relatively. So it doesn't mean you no longer honor your life on that level. You still do your best to keep the body healthy, you do your best to have a good income, you do your best to have good relationships or to find a nice place to live. You give it attention, but it's not that which makes you really joyful or happy without the deeper connection. It's only the one thing that matters. Jesus said it, there's only one thing that matters. And sometimes he called it the kingdom of heaven, sometimes he called it the pearl of great price. He was trying to find some kind of story, some kind of word to give people just a little taste of what it is he was talking about. So he uses the stories, similar to when I say the ripples of the universe, knowing itself as space. That's the only thing that, because without that, no matter what you achieve, it leads to frustration sooner or later. You could become a billionaire, it would lead to frustration without knowing that who you are. And of course, who you are is not a conceptual knowledge. So if you can go up to somebody and say, do you know who you are? If they say yes, that probably means they don't. because they only know that which they can name conceptually and they think that's it. But if they say no, but you have to listen to see what kind of no that is, whether it's a no that is a no that says, I don't know, but I really should know. No, I have no idea. But if there is another no, which is the no of the Zen master, who says, I have no idea who I am. And then he says, do you know who you are? No. That's a different no. It's not the no. So what does that mean, not to know who you are? Because that is the space. Turn off the sound for a moment, the microphone. I'm going to blow my nose. Was it off? Yes. Ready? And this is the most wonderful thing, to find that place in yourself that you cannot really know conceptually. There's nothing really that you can say about it. One could try and say it's very still or something, but there's limits it too. And that's the place of where you really know who you are non-conceptually. But from the level of concept, from the perspective of concepts, you don't know who you are anymore. So you become comfortable. On one level, you know who you are, obviously. You have a name and a past and a history and relationships and a work situation and a home situation and a health situation. On that level, of course, you know who you are. But on the deeper level, you have to become comfortable with not knowing who you are. And only then can you access the deeper level of who you are. If you're uncomfortable with not knowing who you are, you will immediately jump out of that stillness and take refuge in the mind and start thinking about your life again. I must remember who I am. Some people have a fear of going to that place of not knowing who they are. That place of not knowing who they are, by the way, also includes, when you're very deeply in that, then you also don't know who other people are conceptually, and you become comfortable. Not continuously. There may be a time and a place for knowing people conceptually, but you can never relate deeply to another person if the dimension of depth is missing and all you're relating with is on the dimension of mental judgments of the other person. So then you don't know them. So you become comfortable with not knowing who you are, and that includes not knowing who another person is, and being comfortable with meeting a person and having no judgments in your mind, no conceptual thoughts about who or what kind of a person that is. And sometimes you can sense things about that person and without anything formulating in your mind. And there you can connect on that deeper level. So becoming comfortable with not knowing, just like, as I said before, Socrates, the very foundation for all his teachings is he has no idea to start with. The starting point for, and Socrates, a great philosopher, the starting point for his philosophy, as he himself said, I am the wisest of all men because I am the only one who knows that he knows nothing. What that really means is he is comfortable with a place of not knowing anything. And that place arises in the moment somebody asks him a question. What about this? The answer doesn't start with some knowledge that he already has accumulated in his mind. The answer starts with not knowing and being comfortable with not knowing. And then at some point, usually with Socrates, he starts to ask questions. He still doesn't know. But out of the place of not knowing comes a question. And then he listens to the answer. And then he still doesn't know. And then another question comes. And another. Not as it's reported in Plato, as if he already knew he's just playing around with people. No, I know that because I know how that kind of discourse arises. And it's a wonderful place to become comfortable with not knowing who you are, or not knowing an answer, or not having an opinion. At some point you might have an opinion, and sometimes opinions are fine, you play around with opinions, not identifying with opinion, which is a mental position, but seeing that it's just a mental position, that I happen to believe that this political party is better for the country than that political party. It doesn't mean you give up all that totally. You can still have those beliefs in your mind without being identified with the beliefs, which means you're not going to shout at people who have a different belief. So not knowing who you are is a wonderful place, and because then you become the presence, just spacious presence. And that can be in your life, in the background of your life, all the time, in between your thoughts, when you're looking at something, when you're listening to someone, be the space. You don't need to know the next thing you're going to say. A good practice would be to, maybe one day we'll practice it today, there may not be enough time, I could invite somebody up on the stage and say, now, sit there and see what happens, and become comfortable with not knowing what to say. For many people it would be a nightmare. Some people have had nightmares where suddenly the curtain opens and they're on stage and there are 2,000 people there and you don't know your lines. And public speaking, therefore, there are many people for whom public speaking is the most stressful thing ever. If they could go into that space of becoming comfortable with not knowing and just being the presence, and for a while they would say nothing, and then some words would come, and they might be words like, I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth, and that's fine. Of course I can't tell you what else will come, because it's not my situation at the moment. Well, it is continuously mine, but you have to experience that for yourself. So in that not knowing, there is a deep knowing, because you're going to the source of all knowing. So you can know anything through concepts or through the presence that is deeper than concepts. And the two may operate in your life. If you are balanced, then you go into a forest, walk through a forest, and for a while you might say, oh, that's such and such a tree, or this forest, you might have knowledge about this forest, and the birds, whatever you see in it, and to apply it, you look at it through concepts, you can talk about it, and then a time may come when you let go of that, and now you're looking at the same tree that before you named mentally, you're looking at the same tree without naming it. And then you take in the totality of the forest without naming it. And it's only then that you can know the forest on a level that's deeper than concept. You would miss the essence of the forest if you only apply concepts to your sense perceptions and you look at the forest through the veil of your conceptualizations. But if you let go of concepts and you up the presence, then you can sense something that can't really be put into words, but it's the aliveness of the forest. You can sense the forest, which is the totality of those trees, is a kind of presence too, is a kind of being too. The totality of all these trees, there is an energy field there. This is the forest, and you sense its inherent aliveness, which is not the outer forms, which underlies the outer forms of the aliveness. And the moment you sense that, then you really know the forest. So that's the depth knowledge of the forest. The other, the conceptual naming, is the surface knowledge of the forest. I'm not asking you to completely let go of any surface knowledge, you couldn't even do that. But if you are confined to surface knowledge in your life, you miss the depth. In the case of the forest, you would not be able to sense the sacredness of the forest. And it's only when you can sense the sacredness of the forest, you will not use it for limited purposes and probably destroy it, because people who are trapped only in the conceptual mind, for them the forest is only conceptual. So they might look at it as potential timber. They might look at it, as I said somewhere in a book, they might look at it as a research project. You need to examine exactly how, and there's a place for that too. but it's limiting. You would not know the sacredness of the forest. So that, and forest is just one example of the totality of nature and the planet and the sacredness of life on the planet. The conceptual mind asks, what do you mean by sacredness? Can you define? But of course, sacredness is a word not used very frequently these days. I haven't heard it on CNN or Fox News in a long time. So it's not used very much anymore. And the conceptual mind doesn't know what to do with it. Sacredness, what they think, it's religious, or you have to... No, sacredness can only be, you can only know what sacredness is by experiencing it for yourself. And you cannot define what it is. It's related to the it's awesome. Can you turn off the sound a moment? So, okay. And this applies to any, not just the forest, any bit of nature can be very helpful because every tree represents that. There are lovely trees here in this part of the world, both in town here and also nearby, the redwoods. Some trees are 1,000 years old, been there for a long time, and when you go to them, they're very still. And they have a presence which you cannot sense when you only approach them with mental concepts. You have to be still. Then you link in with this aliveness of the tree, which is a very slow being. The tree is like... and it's rooted deep in the earth. And that just represents something else too. In being, rooted not just materially in the earth, it's also rooted in being, deeper than humans are rooted in being, because humans have gone out, even animals have gone out further than the tree, from the one. And that is why in ancient cultures where people were not yet totally misled by conceptualization, sacred tree was a very common thing. Sacred groves, sacred trees, they could still sense that because their ability to sense the sacredness was not yet obscured by excessive conceptualization. So here you have, both in town, wonderful trees, and if you have time, or you may know it already, go to the redwoods and feel those enormous beings there, and get still, be as still as they are. And as I sometimes say, allow them to teach you stillness. Whether or not you touch the tree or not, you can touch it, and some people can sense something there, but that's not the most essential thing. You commune with the tree, and then you know what sacredness is. And this could apply to anything in nature. So you have to bring the non-conceptual mind and know the forest. For some of you, or some people who have never had, then you really know it for the first time. Really know it. And whatever conceptual knowledge you have that might increase, or you might begin to forget it, it doesn't matter. You can still use it if you have to. You can still write something about it. It was such and such a tree, and it was close to 1,000 years old. You can write that, that's fine. But you really knew the tree not through that. It's through going, still, becoming still. And then you do that to another human being. That really changes things when humans relate with that dimension present in relationships. if that dimension is not present in relationships, if you bombard people with mental stuff all the time, not just things that come out of your mouth, but things that you think about them, then that's very limiting, because then the other human being consists only of, to you, becomes mind stuff, just one thought after another about him or her, and often it's critical, because humans are, you might have noticed, are not perfect. And then you can continue to think that that's how he is, that's who she is. And then she said that, and then she did that, or she didn't do that, she should have done that, why didn't she? He always does this, why can't he never just... He is a pathological liar. Maybe he is. Or maybe he just lied a couple of times and you caught him. And then you would need to ask yourself, have I ever lied? Never, never. There's a little exercise in the Course in Miracles which goes with, would I judge myself for that? So in that exercise you're supposed to complain about a person, just a normal complaint, which is a judgment, and then you say, would I judge myself for that? And you have to go, No, I wouldn't judge myself, but I'll judge him. So I think I spoke for more than 3 minutes.
Finally, Eckhart says, the mind-made sense of self is mainly focused on the negative than the positive. To become really free, you have to awaken to who you really are, beyond your situations in the past and in your actual life situation. Have a wonderful day.